and welcome to Rising. Happy off-year election day to all who celebrate and vote, perhaps.
The countdown clock begins.
Yes, well, it truly begins until the big one.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of, we've got a lot of interesting electoral news in the pipeline today. States across the country are holding pivotal elections today for governor, state legislature, and more, offering a gauge of the national mood heading into 2024. We'll be sure to cover the result of those elections here tomorrow. But speaking specifically of 2024 in the big race, this is how it's been described: a 5-alarm fire, a cardiac case in need of a defibrillator, a lemming on course to slowly march into the sea and drown. That is how strategists describe Joe Biden's re-election campaign after new polling shows the incumbent trailing 13 points behind an unnamed Democrat in a general election matchup with former President Trump. In a statement last week, a spokesperson to the Biden campaign retorted, quote, "In the off year, we have built a strong operation to once again mobilize the coalition of voters that sent President Biden and Vice President Harris to the White House with a record number of votes in 2020. Nonetheless, some Democrats are going public with their cries for Biden to drop out before it's too late."
I've said this, Casey. This is not breaking news. I don't think the president should run. I don't think Trump should run. I don't think President Biden should run. We have talent in the Democratic Party. There are some leaders in the Republican Party who are willing to take on the insurrectionists and take on Trump, and I think those candidates should be considered as well. But the whole country wants a move on.
On the other side of the party, operatives are insisting that Joe Biden will be the Democratic nominee in 2024, whether voters like it or not.
I love Axe, but he was also a detractor of the 2020 Biden campaign. So I'm not surprised by this, but it's very disingenuous. Democrats, especially Democratic strategists, know. Republican strategists, anyone who is a professional politico, hell, the reporters know. Joe Biden is the president of the United States of America. Therefore, the head of the party that he is on the ticket of, he is a Democrat. And if the president of the United States of America is eligible to run for re-election and decides to do so, that's your nominee, baby. That's how it works. I know that that might not sound democratic, but that is the game.
In fact, it does not sound democratic. Meanwhile, the ladies of The View had this message for their viewers when it came to Biden's sour numbers.
Well, you know how I feel about polls, because I just feel like, you're polling 4,000 people in a place, and you can't tell me that's half the nation. All you can tell me is that, we polled 4,000 people, and that's how they felt. So I always like to make sure that we're clear on polls, because remember, last time we checked a poll, they had Hillary Clinton winning.
I love her to death. A great part of my childhood, terrific actress,
Star
singer.
of my favorite movie.
So I'm not putting Whoopi down, but does she not know how polls work? Like it's not. They didn't just magically find the 4,000 people who all don't want Biden anymore, right? It's a representative sample.
Well, here's what it is. Everybody likes a poll when it confirms their biases. Nobody likes a poll when it doesn't. And if it were some insurgent progressive running for office who, was calling themselves a socialist or saying they wanted health care, she'd be finding polls here and there or otherwise to say why the establishment candidate that she prefers is actually a really good guy. So Whoopi is going to Whoopi. What is interesting is that they're even acknowledging at this point that there's a problem. And what you're seeing is a kind of cope from people who don't really have coping strategies of being in this position. Simone Sanders can say, this is just how it happens. The incumbent gets to run all she wants. But we are in some unprecedented waters. We have never had a president this old. We have never.
Not even close.
Not even close. And very rarely, only in the post-2016 era, really, have we had candidates that have unfavorable numbers as bad as what Biden and Trump are showing us right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, she's right as a matter of procedure that it is very likely for Biden, as the incumbent eligible to run again, deciding to run again, does have a lot of tools at his disposal to be the nominee. That doesn't mean there shouldn't be a process given, just given basic democratic principles and given how unpopular he is, how badly the poll numbers suggest. Maybe, let voters decide. Maybe they find someone else they like, but it's clear the DNC doesn't want to even go through this. They consider it a charade. They don't want to give anyone else even a fighting chance against Joe Biden. Okay, we'll see how that works out for you.
Let voters decide is exactly where we should be, what everyone should be thinking about. Regardless of what you think Joe Biden's agenda should be, if you have that kind of Ruth Bader Ginsburg-esque, it's his turn, let him do him, don't make him drop out kind of a sentiment, that's fine. The question isn't whether or not Biden has the right to run. The question is whether the Democratic Party has the right to preemptively shut down a primary, reorder the primary states in a way that is advantageous, or at least perceived to be advantageous, to Joe Biden. We'll see if that's even true, given some of the poll numbers coming out of South Carolina and his public, and the way that he is drowning public opinion-wise with black voters that took him across the aisle there. But that is the real indictment here. It's not, frankly, of Joe Biden, who, through some mixture of, being the incumbent and having the right and, being a cantankerous old guy, can do what he wants to do. The question is whether the Democratic Party has failed the public and failed its constituents by not allowing there to be a primary so that there is a alternative, at least an alternative that has been able to make the case to the public in case Biden isn't even able to run.
We are in uncharted waters. It's not just Biden, the age of our members of Congress, our political leaders. It's showing. It's embarrassing. It's concerning. It concerns people of who are even in that political party. Mitch McConnell's had his moments where he just kind of he stops responding at press conferences, and that is concerning to Republicans. Senator Rand Paul, he's from the same state. They get along great. He said it's problem. He said it's not easily explained by what they've put forth as the medical reason. Obviously, we went through what we went through with Dianne Feinstein and to some extent John Fetterman. The political figures are more in the public eye than ever. It's a PR job. It's a job to be on camera, to be fundraising and traveling around and raising money for other candidates. You're in the limelight constantly, and we see you. We see what kind of shape you're in, and it's just it's too much for a lot of Americans. It's not even ideological. It's just like, you're not up for it. I can see that you're not up for it.
Yeah.
I can see the decline.
Well, according to the former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party, Vice President Harris is the party's secret weapon because she's just so gosh darn popular.
There is one secret weapon, not so secret, that they have at their disposal. That's Kamala Harris. On all of these issues, whether it's reproductive rights, affirmative action, voter suppression, just democracy broadly, for all of the reasons that you talked about at the top in terms of desegregation and the challenges to that. Here is an individual with the kind of intersectionality that is the future of the American voter and the Democratic Party, not the past. So why not put her out there to be able to speak to both the policy and the emotional content and urgency of these issues? That's what the Democrats need to do going forward.
What's it going to take, in your opinion, for that theory to be tested? For the Democratic Party to actually say, this is our person, this is who we want to put our effort and our muscle behind and try to move forward there?
They've already done it. In that Joe Biden announcement, the campaign announcement, she was featured a lot more heavily than one would think. So the idea behind that, in my view, is that we're going to make her more of the face of the Democratic Party in this reelect. If you look.
Wowza. Okay, so first of all, listen to the policy agenda points that he rattled off.
Those are not some
Voter
popular
suppression,
things.
Affirmative action?
Yeah.
When's the last time you heard anybody bring up affirmative action? And I think what's going on there is that Biden has failed so much on so many of the mainstream agenda items that black voters, like all voters, have always prioritized these economic issues. I just pulled up a poll from 2022 showing what black voters care about. We're talking about housing affordability. We're talking about the economy. We're talking about healthcare costs. We're talking about inflation. We're talking about abortion access. Now, Biden's going to get a lot of juice out of the abortion squeeze. But on so many of those other issues, that's exactly where he's dropped the ball. Economic issues, black voters have more student debt than any other group in America. You know, the inflation is not a selling point for Joe Biden at this juncture. The $2,000 checks, a lot of people remember they got them under Trump. They didn't get as much money under Biden. The student debt moratorium, even if you think the Supreme Court is responsible for him not being able to follow through with student debt cancellation, he made the choice to lift Donald Trump's moratorium, the pause that enabled so many people to get through this pandemic without having to deal with an extra $500, $2,000 a month in payment. That's on Joe Biden. And the fact that they have to be bringing up affirmative action as the thing that's going to draw people to the polls, and he's coming out of Kamala Harris.
And he was bringing it up in a way that draws attention to the fact that she was chosen for affirmative action adjacent reasons, which I don't think speaks well of her qualifications and her ability to resonate with voters at large. We've talked a lot about how she wasn't even particularly popular. She was going to not do well in California, or she was not particularly popular with black voters or women in particular either.
There are many black candidates who are very qualified to do the job. You're seeing Barbara Lee really distinguish herself in this moment in this race for a Feinstein seat by being the only candidate in that race who's willing to come out against additional funding to Ukraine to Israel rather, and calling for a ceasefire. That could have been she could have been in Kamala Harris's stead. Of course, if she were, she wouldn't be able to take that position.
Although we do have to give credit where credit's due. In that most recent poll that we discussed yesterday, the abysmal results for Biden, showing Biden losing badly in the 5 swing states, losing if relative to a generic Democrat, an unnamed Democrat. Too bad you have to put a name on the ballot for people to vote for him. But also behind Kamala Harris, who up until now, Joe Biden, the one thing you could say for him is he can't step aside. His vice president is more unpopular than he is. That this poll shows that's no longer true. And in fact, if Joe Biden could win people who'd rather have Kamala Harris, he would be ahead in that polling. So that is, I don't know, I think that's reflective of how far Biden has fallen.
It's an indictment
rather than
of Biden,
anything else.
not a compliment to Harris, but for sure it's a problem either way.
Lots of problems. Well, we are 1 year out from the big day. We will be counting down as we proceed. We're so excited. Hope you are. More Rising right after this.